Just built different.
I'll fix it in a second. I'll make it like 1080p for y'all. Is it final or just regular sunshine? I think I got the wrong one.
That looks right.
Yeah, it's just regular.
I lived.
Hey, he's done shitting.
Let's fucking go. Yo.
Cool, welcome to the
This
stream.
is a tangent, but I fucking spilled some water, but on a heavy ass cabinet. I had to pull that shit out of the way, and there's like a fucking baby, like mummy. No, like a fucking lizard mummy behind that shit.
Did you eat it?
Dude, what? This guy lives in a tomb. What the fuck?
Yo, that shit was crunchy though. Not gonna lie.
So you shit for 30 minutes? All right.
Hell yeah, dude. It got that umami to it.
Mm.
Okay. So Sunshine. Sunshine is a rotate-based map, sort of like process. And sort of the key point to how these type of mids work is that in general there are two outcomes to a mid, like two overarching game plans. You can either meet a team and take an aggressive mid into them. You can take like a mirror mid, which is whichever side they go, you go the opposite and you rotate around the point, fighting for the central high ground. In this instance, it's a bell tower, but in process, it's the crates. Is there a different rotate mid too? I know processes rotate, sunshine is rotate, snakes not rotate, gullies not rotate. Neither are either of the Koth maps.
Yeah, I play product as a rotate type map.
I think these are the only two rotate mids, this and process. Is that right?
Yeah, because Villa's not.
Yeah, so it's just these two maps. But the way these sort of work, right, is that there's a central high ground. Whoever controls this high ground oftentimes controls the places the enemy team can go. And on all the maps, on rotate mids anyway, there tends to be one spot on the mid that's significantly weaker than anything else. So for example, on process, that's behind the crates in the low ground. And on this map, it's behind Tetris. So in general, the kind of objective of this type of mid is secure high ground. Unless you're meeting. So let me rephrase. If we're playing a rotate type mid, the general objective is to control this upper high ground with some sort of soldier player on it, while the rest of your team rotates on the front side of Tetris, not the back. This shit is really bad. You never want to be back here if you can help it. It's very low vision, and that's really why it's terrible. Is it's very low vision, so it's very difficult to deal with aggression coming at you from behind Tetris like this. So you always want to be fighting from the front side of Tetris. And then that in turn is why this high ground is so important. So you always want to try getting a soldier up here before you push or anything like that, right? And so the weak point of the mid is again behind Tetris. So I'm trying to think of how I want to deconstruct this, but let's start with our soldiers, I guess. So on soldiers on rotate mids, in general, unless you're doing an aggressive meat mid, you want to be holding your HP for some sort of collapse that you know is coming in the future. For example, a team goes behind Tetris. That's means for a collapse. You can call they're behind Tetris. Let's kill them. And then our soldiers who should be maintaining their HP should be bombing. That's kind of self-evident. But there are other things like they have a pit, like they lose someone or whatever. The main role of a soldier is to try and stay as healthy as they can until they're collapsing with their team on something. The second part of soldier is maintaining high ground while staying healthy, and that's the harder part. And in general, the way you do that is through demo spamming this high ground so his soldier can land on it. So particularly on bell tower, but this is also true for process. It's less true, but particularly for bell tower, since it's a very small centralized location, you never really want to be the first person on it because the first person to land on the bell tower just gets sticky spammed and jumped. So you really don't want to be the first person on this bell tower if you can help it. That being said, if they're just rotating behind Tetris and giving you this bell tower, you can just jump the bell tower, walk across point, and try and collapse, right? It's not a steadfast rule, but in general, if you can help it, you want to avoid being the first soldier on this bell tower. I'll get more into like pocket positioning and shit on this mid in a little second, but that's a general idea. As for our scout, what we should really be looking to do is to be keeping our medics safe on these mids. Nothing else really matters, right? Because the reason mid is so important is because it's a mandatory fight for the first point. And if you kill their medic and keep yours alive, you obviously win that round. Well, not obviously, but you increase your chances very exponentially. So, as a scout, the worst possible outcome is your med dying. If your med lives and you lose the mid, you don't lose the round. But if your med dies, you lose second and the last point potentially. So as a scout, you really, really want to be on top of protecting our med. So something like this is kind of common early in the mid, right? So if I were to say, if I wanted a default, and then Roamer has a bunch of places he can be. He can be like behind them in their cafe. He can be doing all types of shit. So I don't have Roamer in this picture, but they're also facing the wrong way because we're fighting this way. But I think it illustrates the point of sort of this is almost, again, it's a rotate mid, so there's no default. But if I were to give you a default for a rotate, this is kind of the objective. You want to have your scouts near enough to your medic to where they can protect from soldiers from different angles. At the same time, they're not inside your medic, so you're not eating the same spam together. This is kind of a good spacing you can be looking for. And then again, big important idea is on rotate mid, there's going to be a central piece of high ground. With once you control that high ground, you can control where the enemy goes and then fight them from poor positioning or on some sort of advantage you generate from having high ground. That can be HP, that can be player, that can be a whole bunch of shit. Any questions so far about how rotate mids work in general and specifically Sunshine?
Yeah, so is there like a telegraph to know what side the enemy's rotating? Because usually I like to rotate counter to whatever side the enemy's going.
Yeah, and that's the mirror type mid, which is what we're talking about. And in general, there's not a great indicator outside of which side their demo is, right? Because as a demo, if you go to a certain side and you catch an arrow, it is extremely slow for you to rotate back to the other side. So if you see a demo sort of commit past this like invisible mid line of mid here, right? From their choke to your choke, if their demo chooses one side of this line, you can give a pretty confident call to your team which side the enemy team is going to be going.
Sure. So in that case, to the rest of my team, I guess I'll just be calling whatever side we're going on. It's really late.
I mean, yeah. So the way the comms work is that while you're in spawn, right, as a demo man, you're comming, I would like to meet or I would like to mirror them, and then you do your rollout, and then once you're in mid, you'll comm which side the other team is.
All right, word.
And then based upon where they are, if you're meeting them, you go to wherever they are, right? If you're rotating, go to the opposite side.
For sure, dude.
Is there a way to rotate in front of Tetris without like clumping up together or maintaining that spacing that we have right now?
Not kind of, but in general, the players you want rotating in front of this is never a soldier. So as a soldier, you want to be avoiding this part of the map entirely if you can. Obviously, again, this is not like a never touch this place, but we're rotating and your soldier's waddling along the floor with your team. He's probably doing something unoptimal. There's probably something better he can be doing, like jumping some high ground, spamming something that's important for a fight, something that's not waddling around on the floor. And then, but I mean, not really. It's supposed to be small. That's why this bell tower is so important. Because if you control this bell tower, you can control this little choke point they have to rotate through. And if you control this bell tower and make them go behind their own Tetris, that's where the collapse and the killing happens. So that's really why this shit is so important. But no, you can't really get through this choke and maintain this type of spacing.
Okay.
It's just too small, right? You just can't. Any questions about rotate mids?
You can't take the tower as the soldier. Where do you recommend a pocket soldier to sit?
So as a pocket, so this is what I was going to talk about in a little bit. But I'll talk about it right now since you asked. So as a pocket soldier, a really, really powerful early position is actually under the point here, right? Let me turn no clip on. I'm on scout. Am I? Yeah, I should be on scout. Yeah, I'm on scout. But rolling out like this on soldier gives you early vision, early spam, and a wall to hide behind. In this position, feels slightly exposed, but when you start playing it, you'll realize it's really, really strong. You get this early spot into the choke here with early spam. You can catch demos and medics for an early 40 or 50, sometimes even scouts, right, if they walk into it. And then from here, you have you're one jump away from everything on the map that matters. If you're playing a meet mid and they're playing their right, so that means your plan is to meet them on their Tetris because they are going to the right side. Right? They're calmed going right. And it's a meet mid, an aggressive mid, and you're here, you're one jump from this Tetris. And another thing about this spot is that the jump is blind from the perspective of the enemies. So if you're here as a scout and a soldier jumps from this corner, never in a million years are you going to catch this dude before he peaks. You're just not fast enough. He's going to jump and be past the apex of his jump before you can start reacting. And that's sort of the goal on soldier when you're jumping, if you can help it, is try and take a blind jump. For that exact reason, it makes you harder to deny before you reach the apex of your jump. But yeah, this is a really good spot. You can play a more passive spam position, like on top of Cafe. Like this is a pretty good spot. As pocket, these are sort of the two places you really end up playing at the very beginning of the mid, and then you're waiting a little bit for some sort of thing to happen, and then you're going to react to it. Those can be things like they're behind Tetris, they're soldiers on bell tower, jump bell tower, shit like that. Like,
Got it.
cool. Any other questions?
Nope, we're
Cool.
good.
Let's talk about meet mid and sort of. It's a very similar idea. It sort of cuts to the chase. When you're playing an aggressive mid where you're trying to get into them, bell tower is equally as important, but for a different reason. In that, if you don't have a control of the bell tower and you're trying to fight from this, particularly from this side of the point, right? So let's say they go to their right and you're playing a meet mid. Bell tower is ridiculously important because now you're the players who have to walk the front side of the point into the team. And if they have a soldier on top of you here, you're never getting up this side. And what that means is you're in low ground. Like the lowest ground of the whole mid is like right here. And so you can get stuck here if you don't control this bell tower. So again, bell tower is important. It's just for a slightly different reason. As a soldier, there are a couple hot spots you should really be looking to play. Sort of the three obvious ones. This one is also a very powerful pocket spot, actually, because you can sit here and do some early free spam on things that you're about to fight. If they're trying to get on the point over here, right, you can do spam over here. Also, if things are getting too aggressive left too early, you're in a really good spot to punish a feeding scout here. Like if someone just sprints around this corner into your team who's probably around here, you're in a great spot to prevent that. You're also one jump away from all three of the important spots on the mid. So this is a pretty good pocket spot to be looking out for. As for the rest of the mid, like aggressive side mids, it's all about high ground. Whoever controls the high ground around where the fight is happening wins the dry fight. That's just TF2. Regardless of what class is on it, if you have someone on the relevant high ground, the fight is in your favor. That also leads into kind of a good rule of thumb for leaving or staying on a mid you might be losing. So let's say we trade even on a soldier and a soldier. Health is kind of unknown. And in the middle of a fight, the rule of thumb should be look at the high ground. If you control the high ground, you can stay. If you don't control the high ground, you have to leave. So if something happens and things are even and like it sort of feels like a turning point in the mid, you know how sometimes that happens. If you're playing a mid, your shoulder jumps in, does a lot of damage, and then dies. And then a scramble happens, not a lot. Damage is trade, but nobody really dies. And then you all regroup on your medic. When you're regrouping here on your medic like this, and you notice you have none of the high ground, it's probably safe to assume you can start leaving. If it's neutral, obviously you can keep fighting for it. But if they have like a soldier here, and you guys are fighting from here, there's no way you're going to get back into this mid without losing your medic. It's just impossible, right? So counting high ground as you're trying to decide if you want to stay or leave is like a really powerful rule of thumb for like figuring out how the mid is going. Does that make sense?
Yep.
Cool.
Yep.
Meat mids are kind of hard to just like tell you how to play. So if there's any scenarios or questions about aggressive mids on this map, you want to like ask me. I might be able to answer scenarios for you, and that might be better than just telling you how to take a fight.
So I want to meet mid.
Mm-hmm.
As a soldier, I'm playing Roamer here.
Mm-hmm.
Is it better to still continue to get to high ground, or is it better to try to spam the combo with my other soldier?
Oh, it's much better for you. Well, it depends again. Are you early or later into a meat mid? Because later into a meat mid, spam is almost irrelevant. If it's at the beginning and things haven't quite start popping off yet, and you're sort of waiting for the initial fight to jump in, spam is good. But if it's later into the mid and like your team is fighting, you need to be fighting with your team. Spamming in the middle of a fight, unless if you're really hurt or some other reason so you can't be fighting, then spamming is good. But if you have the choice between spamming or jumping into high ground and fighting, always jump into the high ground and fight with your team. Did that answer your question, or should I?
Yeah, that answered
Okay,
it.
perfect.
So like key like things you're looking for to like initiate fights or to punish bad positioning is just like if they're hiding behind Tetris, or if they're just standing in front of Valley with no like actual high ground to back them up on a rotate, right? Yeah, okay.
So-
you can just trap them out in front of Valley.
Yeah, exactly. So there's a
Gotcha.
couple, like those are the big buttons specifically on Sunshine, but like a couple general things you're looking for is A, high ground presence, B, calmed damage. If they're calmed, they're destroyed, then taking a fight in general is good, and that's when the crunch should be happening. Or, and a general positioning rule, if they have very poor vision of bombs that are about to happen. So for like example, Tetris again or on process, if they're behind their own crates and they can't see the bombs coming, that's a really good time to try and take a fight because it maximizes your bomb like efficiency or whatever.
So what do you think of like keeping a soldier in cafe or whatever?
I think that's a very viable play as long as you like, as long as your team's all on the same page.
Sure.
Because sometimes what'll happen is like you'll send a soldier behind, and then the comms get kind of quiet during a fight, and then that soldier has no idea what timing he's supposed to be getting in on. And so either
Sure.
A, he feeds or he baits because there's not enough information, and then you take a 5v6. So if you are going to be putting players behind in positions where like calmed in from a flank, it's really important that we're talking to that player so they know what's going on. I'm experiencing similar problems with my team right now, where it's like
Okay.
our mids are very in
All right.
disarray because of that. Anything else? Seems like no. Do we want to talk about holding mids, or are we fairly confident on that happening? How that works?
Oh yeah. What the fuck am I supposed to trap? Because all the traps on that mid are ass cheeks.
So, if we have even Ubers and we're holding, you're probably somewhere here, right?
Oh, here, let me see. Oh, I see. Okay, but yeah, I don't know.
So,
Choke traps pretty much suck dick all around, whether you put them on the left or right.
yeah, the traps when you're playing demo on this mid are not as much to kill things as much as slow them down in this choke as they push into you, so things can rotate to you. Does that kind of make sense?
Yeah, I
Right? Because
got
like in Snake, when you're trapping Saw so that when things run through, you det and kill them. Here, it's less so because it's very hard to hide a trap, except for like right there.
Yeah, sure.
What do you think of the like roamer bomb from Valley? Like you surf up Valley,
Like
like going from mid
the
into their
purple shirt
second.
bomb, where you go off here, strafe into
Yeah,
left,
yeah.
surf this thing, and go in. I think it's okay.
Okay.
Particularly if you're having trouble getting in from choke, it's a good alternative. I wouldn't send my first sack like that because it kind of like. I feel like the point of that jump is to punish teams who are playing too far back and attempt to like overcompensate for this force. Sending them behind then is really good, but like doing it
Sure.
first bomb, I don't think.
Okay.
Still have to practice that. Fuck.
Well, like yeah, cause like you just have to like with that one. It's really easy to get shut down because their flank can just shut down that's like that surf really easily. So it's the only thing I'm worried about.
Forgot the command. I was gonna make the stickies bigger, but yeah. So good slowing down traps are again on this corner. You'll catch a scout who's peeking this corner too tight into you to try and like get a cheeky 80 on you or something. You can just dead on this kid. this trap back here is actually pretty good because most soldiers trying to get in aren't going to want to jump off the left because that's a higher time spent in the vision of the scouts, right? Because if you're jumping off this left wall as a scout and I'm sitting right here, I see them the whole time they're jumping off this our right wall, but their left, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So as a scout, I'm paying attention to that shit. It's much harder for me to see soldiers jumping in from the right. So putting a trap here and making them either die or clear it so they can jump is a really good thing.
Alright.
Maybe in this pack too, but like
I'm not sure about that one. A lot of people just hug the left automatically when they walk through
yeah,
choke.
but like you said, the traps are really not great. It's really more to slow them down in the choke so you prevent them from pushing with your spam.
Alright, word.
They have to clear your traps and they're getting spam from your soldiers and you're putting pipes in them. And that makes the choke really hard to push. That's more the objective than getting a pick. Is that the command? Yeah, there it is. So those are some
Holy
really good
shit.
things.
Damn, there's just some sea mines.
Told you demo was OP.
Yeah, for real. And then so yeah, demo here. I want a scout. Almost always here if you can help it.
Okay.
Pocket scout. I want flanks over here. I want my pocket here. I want my roamer in flank. It's kind of more nebulous, but you never really want to be sitting here trading spam as a roamer because it's a worse angle for you. So you're sort of playing off your buff. Where once you get crit heals again or whatever, you're 300, you can like peek and like try and do flank shit. But outside of that, you're not really in flank because there's not much for you to do. Your flank scout's mostly going to be calming it. So, excuse me, I had to. Oh. But yeah, as a roamer, you don't really want to be just sitting in flank doing nothing if you can help it, because the soldier who's spamming you from the top of that thing just is a better position than you, so it's not really good being here. If you want, you can take a buff and try and help your dude cafe, or you can play a little more passive back here. Stuff like that tends to work much better than sitting in a flank and fighting this guy who's just sitting in the air shooting you. So this is kind of a default evens hold. Again, this guy is very variable. He doesn't have to play here. He can play just about anywhere. But these 4, 5 are like really non-negotiable. You really want your demo and choke. You really want your scout with that demo. You really want your pocket and cafe, and you really want your flank scout spotting this valley like this. Yeah. Should I talk about sacks or holding this? Holding this, that's kind of easy. You just play in a door. Oh, actually, let's talk about that. Actually, I forgot. That's an important thing to talk about. A common thing that happens is that when teams are pushing in. Okay, here's a question, I guess. When teams are pushing into you guys and it's even numbers, you're only at disad. Does your roamer die like every time, or?
Oh, we try to make him die every time and try and force.
Yeah.
Okay.
Like sometimes Cube just bombs and drops him in and it's fat.
Are we trying to spam before the
It
bomb?
yeah,
or
it
is
depends
the
on where
force
they're coming
happening on the
from.
bomb? Okay.
I feel like it depends on where they're coming from. Like if it's from cafe and we know we can spam it hard, usually you can get a force there. Sometimes they can get through valley like really deep before you can ever really spam them. So
Sure.
that in that case we send soldiers sometimes, choke, kind of same deal. You get
Okay.
kind of deep. But
Cool. So basically, the reason I was asking is that a lot of teams don't try and do the spam force thing before the sack. Like the only play they do is that they walk in, we send our roamer and spam on the roamer as he sack. I think the objective should be some sort.
Oh, you just cut out.
We can't hear you right now.
Yeah, I stopped speaking. I'm just putting players
okay.
in spot for a second.
Oh, okay.
I think in general, I think it is much better to try and spam force before a sack, like pretty much every time. I can't really think of a situation where I'd rather just send a sack in instead of shooting the 8 rockets first and then sacking on it. So what I mean by that is when you have two soldiers paying attention and like working with each other, anytime a team tries to walk through, there has to be a player who's first in, right? That's just someone has to get in first. When that first player is getting in, that is when you want to be spamming together, not waiting until they're all in and shooting the medic who's the last one through. It's another common spam issue players like teams have. They just don't know. But you always want to be shooting the first scout, soldier, demo. Whoever's walking through this choke first should be eating 8 rockets. Because what happens is, if this dude's walking through and eating 8 rockets, he's either A, getting dropped in the Uber, B, lives and is low and is not in the Uber, or C, he gets low and his medic pops on him. So this sort of idea of spamming the first person through with 8 rockets is very, very high success rate. Like it's very, very strong. So that'd be something I'd look to start incorporating into your game, is this stuff. And it happens everywhere. Anytime there's a choke where they have to walk through 3 different choices of choke like this, you can be working a spam force. It's true on Sunshine, it's true on Process, it's true on Goalie. Like all the maps have situations where this idea is really, really strong. So this is something to start looking for and practicing. But yeah, I like my pocket bell tower and my roamer above cafe. What the pocket's job is to spot this cafe really early like this. And so basically as a pocket, I'm sitting here, I'm spotting this left side and I'm spotting this choke. As a roamer, I'm staring at this valley with my scout. As flank scout who's on top of this thing. Your pocket scout's here building, your demo sort of forward, wherever his traps are, right? And then our soldier combo over here is putting 8 rockets on the first person through whatever door. If we don't force and we don't get a kill and shit is just normal, our pocket jumps away and our roamer reloads and then dies. Is there any questions about how that works?
Yeah. Which doorway should the combo be standing in? Do you prefer cafe or choke?
It doesn't. Whatever you guys like better. It's not. I prefer choke a little bit because it's more open more quickly. Versus cafe, you have to walk through an enclosed space for a longer amount of time to be completely out. Versus choke, it's a much more linear open path to being out.
Yeah,
you leave choke and then you leave shutter.
We pretty much just defaulted to choke these days, but
I think it's good.
I want to try cafe because we get a much better spam angle as like the combo on Valley. Because like actually I can start contributing. If we're in choke, then I can't really do shit if they go through choke.
I mean, yeah, that's just sort of how it is. I think the what you can start doing. Do you have a trouble? Do you die a lot to Ubers, Dennis, or are you usually pretty out and not dying to Ubers?
I think I'm usually pretty out.
Rest of the team, does he die a lot?
Not to Ubers, no. He's good about jumping out.
Okay. So what you can start doing, Dennis, is that you can be forward like this, and then when you see that first person, you can spam your pipes and hold S into whatever place your team is leaving.
Alright, word. I'm just worried that if the first person through is a demo and like they just use right around the corner, then I'm insta caught and dead.
Well, you should have an escape sticky still, right? So there's going to be a sticky here, right? And then you have your traps wherever you have them. And basically the idea is you have an escape sticky, traps, and you have your pipes out, and you're forward. And then you're trying to spam with the initial 8 rockets from your soldiers. So if they're coming choking shit, you're up here. You're holding S and shooting pipes, and then when you're over your leave sticky, you jump det and you're out wherever you're going. This is usually pretty safe. The time demos get caught is when they get caught with their sticky launcher out. If you have your sticky launcher out and you're like shooting stickies into a choke, you are overcommitted. But if you have traps up and you have a sticky to leave on and you have pipes out, you're not really caught because you're one sticky jump away from like mouth of valley or all the way out choke, right? Like you have a one sticky way out of this mid. So in general, you can be forward spamming these pipes and then jumping out after the initial spam of your soldiers, and then you're reloading, ready to fight the post fight wherever it happened, right?
Alright, word.
Any other questions, concerns with what I just said? Cool. So I want to talk about sacking in a second. We already covered the Garbuglio sack or whatever, so I don't really want to talk about it. I want to talk about rotating your beam into a different doorway from the sack that's happening. So let's say we're sacking from choke. Right, we're sacking from choke, so that's going to kind of look like So we're sacking from choke. I'll explain the hold later. So we're sacking from choke. The last thing we want to do is draw spam into the choke our soldier is going to be jumping from. So we never want to be spamming. We never want to be spamming and having the soldier jumping over our head as we spam. It's almost always going to get him denied or early damage. The best thing you can do is rotate to a different door, cafe or valley, and whichever one you choose, you can aggressively spam or whatever. And then as they're looking at the wrong doorway, that's when the soldier jumps in. And so now they have to split their attention between two different tasks, and it makes them perform. You're trying to give them as many chances to make mistakes as possible during a sack. So the more pressure, the more spam, the more whatever the fuck you can do during a sack that doesn't get you killed while your roamer is in and dying increases that percentage of the sack happen, like being successful. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So that being said, a classic, a favorite of mine is that if your soldier's going to be sacking from choke, you rotate everyone but your pocket soldier who's still playing cafe. He can play here or a little more passive if he doesn't want to be taking fights like that. And then you have your demo sort of forward here on a beam. You have pocket or flank scout, whichever one's more comfortable being forward. Be a little behind your demo, you're not trying to take a beam as much as you are floating around your demo looking for this dude who's going to jump in the sky right here. And then your flank scout's a little farther back, and he's doing the same job as this guy, just from a different angle. So both your scouts are making sure your medic doesn't die from the soldier who's going to do the jump that every soldier does, which is from this blue sign off this wall up here and into the skybox and onto your medic right here. That's the same jump they're going to do every single time. So as scouts, you can just be ready for that shit and stare at this spot where he's coming from. And that's really what your scouts are doing here. And so the objective here is that you have this sort of combo, in quotes, rotating towards valley and spamming. If you can, and they give you a flank player who's too aggressive, kill this guy, right? Like the whole point is to be drawing attention, and killing a player does that really well. So if there's an aggressive flank player who's still here, you can be focusing that guy, obviously. But outside of that, you're really trying to draw attention and do chip damage to their medic. Anything above 30 damage to a medic before the sack is invaluable. Because now he goes from being confident in tanking one full damage rocket to now it's a question. Can I take this full damage rocket? Do I pop? Do I drop? Right? You're giving them a chance to make a mistake. So any early damage you can do to a medic is going to be valuable. That's why sometimes you'll see a team rotate a demo with a beam into choke, and he tries to sticky snipe over this fence onto a medic to do 30 to 50 damage, and then they send a sack on top of that 30 and 50 damage. This is a similar idea, but I just feel it's strictly better because it is a lot more pressure. Because they have to respect this demo and scout on a beam here. Because if they just ignore you, you just walk in and kill their flank. And then the sack's happening, and then it's 4v5, and you're taking an exchange, and it's just not good for them. So they have to be paying attention to this combo. And in having to pay attention to this combo, that's eyes not on your roamer. Does that make sense?
Yeah, sure.
Yep.
Cool. There's variations on that, right? So like if your soldier wants to sack through cafe or something, you can be in choke or in valley. But this idea of rotating a pseudo combo somewhere to spam and threaten a dry push while your soldier sacks is really, really powerful. It's like really good. What else is good into the second? Not much. The second's kind of ass to sack into, and it's not really good to snipe either. Actually, that's not true. You can do some sort of interesting things where you rotate a sniper and a beam into this valley like this, and you can get peeks on scouts and flank players and pick them off one by one and stuff. Are we like a sniper team?
Yeah, sort of.
No. No.
I like to play sniper instead of Sulcus, but usually it should be a scout, right?
Yeah, it's kind of a debate, but I think having a soldier snipe is in general not as good as having a scout snipe, because soldiers are much better at protecting the sniper than a scout. And so if you have a scout snipe and you have a soldier protecting him, that's a very powerful combo. If you have a soldier snipe and a scout protect him, that sniper's probably going to die if they start getting pressured. Just because he has no real crowd control on a scout or a soldier jumping him, right? And he has relatively low mobility compared, like scouts are fast or whatever, but in terms of repositioning quickly, soldiers are way better. So if they full push into your sniper, your soldier can just jump away and not die, and then you only lose one. But if there's a scout here with the sniper and they're full pushing into the sniper, you're probably losing 2 here or whatever, right? So in general, I think having a soldier not snipe is better.
Dennis, stop.
Dear
For real.
God.
Wow.
Chippy.
Why?
I'll talk about pushing though. So in TF2, there tends to be 3 ways from a choke into a point, and that holds true here. There's valley, there's choke, and there's cafe. Each of the doorways, I end up giving a label. There are, in general, 2 labels. I give 2 out of the 3 chokes every time. There's one door that I'm pushing if I'm trying not to use. There's one door I'm pushing if I'm trying to use. Then the third door tends to be sort of a combination of those 2 ideas. In the second, the door you push to not use is cafe, and the door you push to use is valley. And that seems kind of counterintuitive, but I'll explain why. Valley is ass cheeks to push from. It's actually really, really hard. One, because you have very little vision. And you're also, again, threatened by these blind bombs that are coming off this corner. They can be really deadly for your team trying to push valley. It's also very, very low ground. So if you get met here early, you're taking a very upwards fight, which tends to be bad. So trying to get through valley without using is very difficult. You can do it, but it's always literally an uphill struggle. Versus cafe, which has an initial sort of small choke point you have to deal with, but once you explode through this choke point, it's 1, high ground, 2, vision of the full second, and 3, on top of a pack. So there's health, vision, and high ground. So cafe is very, very strong to push, trying not to use. So that, an example, is like on 50% ads when you know they're going to be playing all the fucking way back and they know it's huge dish ad and you just know they're going to give you this cafe point for free. You can come through cafe, explode through, see what's going on, and then just bully your way through this point and take it from them as they leave bats. Any questions about what I just said about Valley and Cafe?
So this is all considering the fact that we have ad, or just kind of in general, like.
Well, in general, I mean, yeah.
Okay.
I mean, it's just true, period. So if a team is going to be pushing into you, the inverse is true as well, right? So if you're playing your second and you know you have big dis, you can gamble it's going to be from Cafe. And what that means is you can play to their worst play. And what that shit means is that you know that if they go Valley, it's not really good for them. So you can be paying more attention to Valley, like more committed towards the Valley side and just spotting Cafe. So if they come Cafe, you're not really going to do anything anyway unless you have a sniper. So it's better off just not losing one if you can help it. But if they start coming Valley and you see they're coming Valley, you can actually put resources into this Valley and have a reasonable expectation you can force them. Does that kind of make sense?
Yeah, perfect sense.
Cool.
Yep.
But yeah, as a pushing team from mid into second, Cafe is going to be your try and hold this Uber door, and Valley is going to be use the Uber door. And the Uber that's going to happen 99% of the time if you're pushing Valley on ad is going to be a demo scout chariot. And the biggest thing you can do for this demo scout chariot is hug this right wall until you're popping on this demo around this corner. If you walk smack through the middle of this valley, you can be spotted from bats as early as here, even farther, right? But if you do this and get into the right, they don't actually have vision of you crossing here. So you can cross, they can't see unless there's a soldier here or whatever, right? He can see you. But if they're bats, they can't see you cross, and then you can hug this right wall. And once your demos, this is too far because he can be seen. Your demo wants to be putting his stickies down before he can be seen and popped on before he's seen. So there's 2 stickies going down right here. And then Dennis is getting Ubered on here, walking onto these stickies, and then jumping into the skybox above this area. And Dennis is looking to try and sticky them off from wherever they're trying to leave. wherever these players are playing into, he's looking to sticky this floor so they can't leave, and then catch a flash as he falls back to earth. And so as the pocket scout, all you're trying to do on this Uber is this demo goes into the skybox. You're staring at your demo, trying to get this Uber to your demo. Because if your demo dies before he hits the floor, the whole push is awful.
Gotcha.
Versus if you can catch this guy before he falls, like get an Uber to this guy before he falls, flash him, and he lives, then you have an Uber demo and scout with stickies on their exit in their face. Any questions about how that shit works?
Nope.
Do we want me to talk about what flank should be doing, or do you guys have like an idea?
I think we just pretty much wait for the Uber to go, and then we get ready to go in after we hear
pretty much
whatever.
You're really
before
not
they're
looking to
leaving or
die. Is
whatever.
all you're really looking to do. You're just trying to get a buff, stay healthy, and as the Uber is like starts evolving and things are happening, you're listening to comms and then trying to collapse with your team. That's really the mainstay ideas, right? That's pretty basic. And that's pretty much all I know about mid. Second holding's pretty obvious. I'm gonna start going faster because I'm taking a long time. But default holds should look kind of something like does that sit well with us? Does that look familiar at least?
Yep.
Cool. That's kind of how you want to be default holding on evens. In lobby, a little bit more time here because there's a lot of mistakes that happen in this lobby that people just don't know. Like, how do we play?
Wait, were you saying on that second, like facing into their last, or?
Yeah. So that's your even holds as the aggressive team. You have their second, and you're holding it. On
Really, you wouldn't just take lobby or whatever. You would actually
not
just
immediately. You want to set up, and then once you're set up and buffed, you take lobby. But yeah, I'll talk about lobby in a second. But lobby is a place you go to sack, not to hold. There's just too many doors and like too much shit that can go wrong. It's very volatile, I think is the word. I think that's what that means. But yeah, lobby is not a good place to be if you're trying to stabilize and like control what's happening.
Do you have a player in dungeon, like if you're on second?
No, but that's kind of what my scout does. So as a pocket scout, what I'm sitting here next to my beam, and I'm sort of spotting shutter to help shutter. I'm spotting bats to help bats, and I'm just playing to spot this like dungeon like this. I'm not even looking to fight this dude. I just want to know he's coming.
Yeah.
So you can play like this or whatever, right? And then you see him coming, and then you hold S, and then you start being ready for this guy to jump you or whatever. Let's talk about lobby. So a big thing you can start doing immediately that'll make you better at getting in this lobby is buffing. Like while you're buffing players, the first couple players buffed should start walking towards lower right together and start clearing for stickies, right? Because stickies are going to be always somewhere like here. The source engine just doesn't work. Doesn't like. Oh, did that work? There you go. So for example, if my pocket and my pocket scout are the first couple people buffed, they should be taking their buff into lower right to one, kill any monkeys that are here. If there are no monkeys, what you're looking for are stickies above the shutter. If it's clean, calm it clean, and then look at bats and see if there's any stickies bats. And if it's not, you can calm that shit clean, and then no one ever dies from stickies again. So that's a really good thing you should start doing. If you're not, that'll instantly make you better at getting into this lobby.
So it's just like a lot safer than pushing the lobby from bats, for example.
Exactly, because bats, it's a blind take on stickies could or could not be here. As a soldier, you can like try and clear them, right? And you can put stickies here. You can shoot rocket here to knock the stickies, there to knock the stickies. But at the end of the day, it's still a gamble. Versus if you come lower right, you know 100% if there's a sticky on the shutter door or not. And then you can calm that. And then you can know 100% there's stickies above this bat. You can calm that. Another reason it's good is because it's time efficient. If you're just sitting here while your players are getting buffed, you're just burning the buff you just received. So the moment you are max HP, you should be looking to do something with that buff. So it's time efficient to, while you're buffing players, the first couple people healthy should be start getting a little ahead of the team and clearing lobby for stickies and shit like that. All good?
Yep.
Yeah.
Cool. So as holding this lobby, there's a default hold that I just teach people, and that seems to work with high success rate. You put your demo near stairs, put your medic somewhere in this area between the bottom of stairs and pack, but somewhere over here. You have once your roaming soldier top left. You have your flanks spotting dungeon from right there. As a pocket scout, I'm pretty free to float around, but all I'm really doing is wherever has the most heat on it. So if they're spamming hard right, they're spamming hard left. Wherever the like action is, I'm helping as a pocket scout. You're sort of a rotate, try and stay out of the way, but help. Is sort of your idea. And your flank scout's spotting dungeon from here. And then as a roamer, again, you're kind of free to be receiving a buff for the sack that's about to be happening. You don't really have a door you need to be paying attention to. You should just be focused on maintaining your crit heals and thinking about how you want the sack to go down and stuff like that.
So I have a question about your hold. Like,
Sure.
Why don't you keep the like med like on bats and then have your demo just peeking?
Because that
like,
isolates
into-
flank too hard.
Right, but I mean like, is flank trading that much as to like they
Yeah,
also
they
need
should
that
be.
much?
And that's, again, this comes back to spamming during a sack, right? The pocket
Yeah.
who's over here. The reason he's over here is if the demo's sticking top this place, right? Our
Mhm.
top right as the pushing team, there's nothing like there's no like convincing or interesting things you can do from top right, right? Versus if you have a pocket getting tanked top left and this flank is asleep and you're doing damage,
Right.
you can like commit or like cause chaos is much easier.
We're gonna hold their combo like top left, and you can actually make something happen.
Exactly.
Well, okay, nice.
That's the reason.
actually-
And again, while the sack is happening, at the beginning of the sack there should be spam, and then before your soldier dies, you should be leaving. All right, so the spam should be happening from top right or whatever. Your soldier's dying, and then before he dies, you need to stop spamming and start leaving. Because as you play against better and better players, the counter sacks will start getting faster and faster. And so good roamers will punish you for being slow on your rotate out of wherever the fuck you are, right? So you'll get punished for being too slow in this lobby against better players. So it's a good habit to spam at the beginning of the sack while he's still in the air. Once that roamer lands, he's done, you leave.
So like the only time you should be setting up in lobby is like if you're setting up for a sack or if you're preparing to walk into their last, right?
Exactly. Because just being by yourself in lobby ahead of your team is a really good way to get picked and ruin your push. So if you can help it, you want to be in as a controlled area as possible, which is outside. So you're in here with your medic getting buffed, and then once everybody's ready, you take lobby, execute the play that's happening, and then if it's an Uber, you're all inning. If it's a sack, you're spamming, all that good shit. But you want to control deaths as much as possible.
Where's the roamer?
Getting buffed, right? Because you're the one who's sacking, so you can't be expected to hold any door. So you don't really have a job. Your job is just to get buffed and then sack.
Okay.
So I'll mention a couple of sack variations really quick. One I think is very, very strong is that if the flank is holding like this, a lot of the time what you can do is that you can buff a soldier, your flank soldier. He can start coming towards dungeon and sit on this corner. You can have your pocket take this beam top left with a pocket scout. And what these two players do is they peek into this flank, do some sort of damage, draw the attention. And once it's calmed that those players are fighting, your roamer lower can jump from lower into this flank and pick the flank who's fighting. Pinch them, if you will. Does that play make sense? Do you want me to talk about that more?
Yeah.
Or are we cool with that?
Makes
That's a
perfect
very
sense.
powerful one you should experiment with. I think that's very slept on. Oh, I have another question. Do we double sack or no?
Sometimes.
We
Not
should be
very
double
often.
sacking every time
On this map?
on this map, yeah. And to last anyway. If you're not in last, you don't have to double sack. But if you're going into last, please, Lord of God, sack. Double sack.
So we take care of guns first too.
Yeah. So again, if you absolutely. So So this comes back to the idea of like while other players are getting buff, you should be using your buff to do something. Once you guys are like in lobby and your roamer's getting a buff to start sacking, the players who are healthy should be peeking a door to figure out off classes, right? This pocket can be peeking top left for a gun who might be over here. Maybe there's a sniper playing left spawn, he shoulder peeks and sees. As a demo, if you're peeking top right I don't know, like far away from the door, you can see they might have a gun back right. Shit like that. So our players who are healthy, while our roamer is getting buffed, should be spotting and then calming where shit is. If there's a gun spotted, do not sack into the gun. There's literally no reason to do that. You should double up your soldiers onto the beam and then spam the gun together. Does that make sense?
Yep.
Yeah.
Cool. So yeah, that sack variation is very strong. So that's pocket, bow scouts, medic, pushing top left into this flank, roamer, here's a comm, fighting, jumps in lower, pinches this flank. Alternatively, there's the classic. The roamer's here, jumps off this wall, skips off this, lands in them deep top left. While that's happening, you can send a scout dungeon if you want, but he's pretty far from the sack, so it's tough as a scout to get value on a double sack here. If you want, you can try and jump in behind the sack, but oftentimes demo will have a trap here he's holding for you. So it's kind of tough. But I think if your soldier's landing on their medic from top right, you can come dungeon and then walk up and like shoot the medic with the soldier as he's like on the medic. Because even just 12 damage will sometimes be enough to work a force or a drop. Yeah, I think that's pretty much it. Do we want to talk about holding last?
Sure.
What are the
Okay, I can cover that.
you ever like, push into last from like lower?
Did
Like,
you
what
just
are the
ask me if you push into last from dungeon ever? Hey, let me talk about pushing into last. I forgot the like important part of that.
Okay.
So pushing into last again, we'll notice there are 3 doorways. The do not use the Uber doorway is top. The aggressive team top left. If you're holding, it's top right. But this place over here, this is where you push if you have player ad and you don't want to use the Uber, or you have like 70% ad and you really don't want to use this Uber right away. If you can help it, you can push top left like this. This is the door for that. If you have smaller ad, that's like 30% or something like sub 30, you can come top right on a demo scout. That's a classic I'm sure you've done. And then on ridiculously like big ad and you want to use it. So if it's like around 50, it's not to the point where you want to be walking into the last. You still want to be getting on the medic, but it's still relatively big, right? So it's like 50%. You can come dungeon. And I think dungeon's a very, very slept on. Because as a scout here, so as a scout in this Uber, right? So let's say I'm the pocket scout in this Uber. You never want to be using from dungeon if you can help. The only risk to this Uber early is a soldier who gets to sit here and just put rockets on your team as you walk up here. So you really want to avoid that if possible. So if you are going to push dungeon, the first step 1 of pushing dungeon is spamming the flank out of top left. And that can be something as little as a soldier peeking this really, really shallow like this and just putting rockets on this corner like that so the soldier doesn't get to play right here. What is wrong with my scout? Why does it feel so weird? Does it look slow to anybody else?
Is it because you're 10 DP?
I have no idea. I think my time scale and shit's all normal. But anyway, so yeah. So as a pocket, you want to be getting a buff before the sack, and then you want to come up here and spam this flank guy off of this corner. So you can do that by peeking shallow like this, or you can jump into this thing as a pocket, which is kind of slept on. Coming up here is really, really good. You can jump into this corner, put a couple rockets here or here, and then jump back out. That's a really good pattern. But again, The reason we're doing that is to get this guy off this corner, because if he's here, this Uber is ruined. If this guy's not here, as a team, you get to hold through this doorway, hug this right wall. And then here's the big important thing. If you hug this right wall and you walk up it, when you emerge from dungeon, there's actually no way for them to engage with you because the silo's in the way. So as the defensive team, if I'm back here, I have no real like way of engaging with the team who's right here because the silo's in the way. So what that means is that you don't even have to use your Uber here yet. As a team who's aggressing from dungeon, you can take your Uber all the way on to point before using. And I hope we understand how disgusting that is. I can't think of an Uber you get to use on point that's not this one. Like, I can't think of one. When
Maybe
dungeon,
like Valley and Villa pushing last, but
or
that's
something like that,
yeah.
right? But like it's absurd that you're using
Yeah.
Uber on the point, and that's like intentional. Like that's the play is you get to use the Uber on the point. It's really strong. And there's a lot of ifs. If the soldier's not here, if they don't get Uber in time, you know what I'm saying? So you're going dungeon, you need to be killing the medic. And if not killing the medic, winning the round pretty fast.
What side is a good side to play on, like after Uber fades?
Anywhere that's not the middle. So a common mistake is that Ubers will start fading, and then your whole team is sort of in this like low ground area fighting. You really want to avoid that if at all possible. So when you're taking an Uber, you always want to. When there's here, how do I? Let me think about how I want to word this. When you're ending an Uber and you have sub 30% Uber left, your pocket scout and your medic should be going towards some sort of high ground to have your medic end their Uber on. And the reason I worded it like that is because wherever your medic is, your team is going to be fighting from, because that's where the beam is and that's where the HP is. If you're not playing around your medic in a dry fight, you lose. So by getting your medic into good positioning for a post fight, for a fight without Ubers, you'll win the post fight a pretty significant number of times, just because you're fighting from high ground with a beam. It's just better. So anywhere you can end an Uber that isn't the low ground is good. You can end that shit top left, perfectly okay. End it top right, good as well. It really does not matter as long as it is not on the point or on the low ground. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Perfect. Is there any questions about Ubering into this last, or scenarios you want to run by me or stuff like that?
Off class.
Would you? Oh,
Well, you can say your question too, and I'll just address them in order.
would you ever double sack a soldier, or would it be too hard to hold like lobby
Out of
that
your
way
own
or
last,
second?
or like into
Double
last?
stack into last.
With two soldiers, I in general don't really like. You just
Okay.
lose so much spam. You just get through doorways so free. Particularly here, where like if you lose both soldiers, you can't really like. You want to exchange shutter early, you got to kind of stand here, but then you got to deal with dungeon. And then if you're trying to exchange early and you're trying to play right, it's just not good because then they give them the whole left side. So without a soldier, it becomes very difficult to get a good exchange out of this point. So oftentimes when you lose two soldiers, you end up start playing back here. And then you have to deal with this light tower and bad vision on bottom right, and you lose vision on dungeon. I have the hiccups, excuse me.
Yeah.
Yeah, in general, you want to avoid double sacking two soldiers. And then in terms of off-classing, I think there are a couple really good things. I think a gun spot over here is really good. It's spammable from top right, but if they're pushing top right, it's just how it is. The reason this thing is so good is in order for an Uber coming top right to kill this gun, they have to look at the floor, and that means their Uber's not looking at your medic. Right? So again, coming back to the idea where you want to give them chances to make mistakes, and the way they make mistakes is by making decisions. So you give them a decision. Do they A, use the Uber to kill this gun, or B, try and kill your medic and then turn around the gun and kill the gun before the Uber ends? That can cause confusion. That can cause all types of shit, right? And so again, this gun's spot's really good for that. There's only really one angle to spam it from, and that's from deep top right like this. You can bring soldiers over here, bully the flank out, and then you can get a pretty good peek on this from over here. Sniping top right is also very, very good because you can do it from very close to spawn. Right, you can be sniping top right like this all the way in spawn, and you're at no risk of dying, and you'll either get a pick or make their medic use because there's a dot. Just by existing and putting pressure, long distance free pressure on top right, you can make a lot of good things happen. I think the opposite is less true. I think medics are using through our top left like every time anyway. Can you think of a time a team pushed top left on you without using? It's very rare. It's like there's a demo and a soldier here. There's too much pressure on this door already. So having a sniper peeking it in general, I think is just not very efficient. They're already using through top left if they're coming top left. Versus if you're sniping top right, you can get a pick on a flank, they're pushing top left. And if they're coming top right, you force an early Uber just by existing, even if you don't hit anything. You force that Uber early, and then you're already in spawn switching off. So it's very high value. I also think heavy over here can be strong. The problem with heavy on this last is that it's hard for him to like be valuable and not die. So as a heavy, you can be up here and be very valuable, but then you just die to the Uber, right? And if you're back here, you're a little less valuable, but you're more survived. You have better survivability, and then even more extreme case back here, you're not very useful, but you're very unlikely to die. I think having more players alive for after the Uber rather than dying to eat a little bit of Uber on heavy. So I don't think heavy is particularly good. I don't think pyro is really great either. Engineer, I said, is pretty strong. That gun spot's good. That gun spot on that pill can be good. A gun on top of this boxes is very hard to spam if positioned correctly. You can put a gun like right here on the other side of this beam, and they can't spam it from top right. Like they just don't have an angle to engage with the gun, so that can be a really good engineer spot. Those are a couple options. Does that answer your question about off
Okay. Yeah, thank you.
Cool. I mean, that's pretty much how Sunshine works. Is there any questions about the points or like any of the bigger ideas I explained? I talked about a lot of shit, so I don't really expect everything to stick, right? But I'm just trying to plant seeds. So as we keep reviewing these things, you hear them over and over again, and you start like building those relationships. And then once you learn that shit, you learn how every map works, just because you understand.
Yeah, I feel pretty good about this.
Cool.
Can I just ask a quick question about double sacking? I may have misheard earlier, but I thought you said you should try to double sack when possible, but then at last you're saying don't double sack. So are there
No, you should be double sacking in the last and like pretty much every time. But outside of last, double sacking is significantly worse because it's much easier on the defensive team to push in on things that aren't last. Right? So like let's like in second to mid, if you're dead 2, they get a lot of free space and everything. But even if you're dead 2, they still have to get through lobby, through a shutter door, or bats, or low ground. Right? So none of their options are good, even if you're dead 2. But if you're dead 2 in mid or whatever, their push-in is significantly easier.
Okay.
But yeah, pretty much every last, you're going to be wanting to double sack into the last. Anybody else have any other questions? I didn't talk about flank very much, so if you all have questions, feel free to ask. If you don't, that's cool too.
No, no real questions. It's all pretty straightforward from what you said.
Cool.
Yeah, that was super helpful. Really in depth.
Yeah, no problem.
Yeah, thank you.
Cool. So is there a demo or is it just a map review?
Just a map review, yeah.
Cool.
We were gonna do a fucking actual demo review on like Wednesday though, right?
Yeah, that's the plan. Wednesday.
Yeah, Wednesday, like we did last week. We're gonna try to get probably some scrums of this and probably try to circle back to Gully Wash. I'm just not as worried about Gully Wash until we get to that week for RGL. But
no, for sure, I would be as well.
yeah. So yeah, other than that, we'll just I guess just hit me up Wednesday after scrims.
Wait, so what am I doing?